Hello everyone. In this video, I will demonstrate how to create an audio visualizer using Blender version 4.5. Let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to change some settings. In the render tab, I want to use cycles, and I want to use the GPU, and we'll use 4 samples. And next, I'm going to hide the default light in the viewport and render, and I'm going to use an environment texture, and that environment texture is called Pink Sunrise, and I will put a link in the description. Alright, so we have our light. I'm going to change the position of the camera. For X, we'll use 1.32 meters, and for Y, -18 meters, and then for Z, 2.1 meters. For the X rotation, we'll use 90 degrees. We'll leave Y at 0 degrees, and for Z, we'll use 1.8. We'll just take a look at the camera view, and everything looks okay there. I will add in a plane and scale it up times 50. Go into edit mode and select the back edge, and then I'll extrude it upward, and that should be good enough. And next, let's add material for the plane. We'll call that material plane. And for the base color, I'll use 25022C. And then for metallic, I'll change that to 0.7. And for roughness, I'll change that to 0.3. Okay, I have the plane taken care of. Now I will go to the cube and move that into position. For X, I'll move it to -5. I'll scale it 0.5 for X and 0.5 for Y and 0.2 for Z, and then I'll move it to 0.5 for Y and 0.2 for Z. And I'll go over to the shading tab. I'll duplicate that workspace and give myself a little bit more room. I'm going to add a color ramp. And I'm going to have 10 color stops going from 0 to 0.9 and 0.1 increments. 0.8, and then this color stop at 1, I'll change that to 0.9. Okay, so next, I want this to actually be green. So red, green. Okay, and I'll copy that 3 more times. And next I want yellow. Pound FF00FF, and copy that and paste that, Control C, Control V. And then for this color stop 0.6, I want orange. So that's pound FFA500FF. I'm going to copy that, Control C, and paste that, Control V. And then lastly, I want red. Pound FF0000FF. Copy, Control C, and paste Control V. I'll change this to cardinal. And next I want a color mix node. Right, I'll plug the color into B, the result into base color. I'll disable the clamp factor checkbox, and I'll change A to black. I'll change the material to band. Over in geometry nodes, I'll duplicate the workspace and give myself more room to work. One more thing that we need to do with the cube, I want to add a bevel modifier. So we'll use 0.125 for the amount and for the segments. Back to geometry nodes. With the cube selected, I will click New, and I want to create 10 instances on the z-axis. So I will add a mesh line node and instance on points. And I will move that to the instance socket and the mesh to the points. And I'll change the offset to 2.5 for Z. And over here in the viewport, you can see that we got the desired result. I'll go ahead and add set material and change it to band. Okay, and I know that I'm going to need an input from the audio file, and I'm going to add one and call it amplitude. We'll leave the type as float. We'll change the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 1. There are two sets of values that I would like to pass to the band material. In order to do that, I'm going to need a couple of store named attribute nodes. So this first one, let's see, we'll leave it as float, and I will change it to instance. And I'm going to call it color ramp. And then I'm going to add in the other store named attribute node. I'll change it to instance. We'll leave it as float. I'll change it to color mask. And we're going to add an index node. And at this point, I should show you the numbers for the instances. So it starts at 0, goes all the way up to 9. And so I want to take these numbers and divide them by 10 in order to get so that it matches the color stops and the color ramp that we created. So I'll take the index and I'll divide it by 10. And I'll connect it to the color ramp value. All right, and then next I want to send a Boolean value that will determine whether the instance receives the color ramp color or the color black. So I'll add in an index. Before we do that, I want to multiply the amplitude by 10. And then I want to change this to, I want to round down and change the number to an integer. So I'll use the floor node. And then I'll add in a node that will give us the Boolean. Okay. Let's plug this here and that there. Okay, and then I'll plug this value into the color mask store named attribute node. All right, now we can head over to the shading tab again and add in a couple of attribute nodes to get those values. Okay, so I'll plug in, well, first I'll change this to instancer, and I'll type in the name color ramp, and I'll plug the factor into the factor, and I'll add in another attribute node. I'll change the attribute type to instancer, and I'll type in the name color mask, and I'll plug factor into this factor. Okay, let's see what we have going on here. I need to change this to mix, and that should do the trick. There, that's better. Okay, now we can see that it's working. And since it's working, we can go back to layout and change the name of the cube to band 01 and duplicate the band. And we're going to move it to negative 3.75, duplicate it and move it to negative 2.5, duplicate it and move it to negative 1.25, duplicate it and move it to 0, duplicate it and move it to 1.25, duplicate it and move it to 2.5, duplicate it and move it to 3.75. Duplicate it and move it to 5. Duplicate it and move it to 6.25. And I'm going to rename all these bands. This is band 02, band 03, band 04, band 05, band 06, band 07, band 08, band 09, and band 10. And before we import the audio, let's go back to output and make sure that we set our frame rate to the desired number. Right, and now let's go to, with band 01 selected, let's go to the modifier tab and insert a keyframe for the amplitude. Go to channel, sound to samples. Right, and we are going to enter in frequencies. Before we do that, let's take a look at this image here that shows the frequencies that we will be entering for each band. So for band 01, we're going to use 0 for the lowest frequency and 31.25 for the highest frequency. I want to change the release time to 0.3. And then I will click sound to samples. Band 02, insert keyframe, channel, sound to samples. We'll go from 31.25 to 62.5. Band 03, insert keyframe, channel, sound to samples, 62.5 to 125. Band 04, insert keyframe, channel, sound to samples, 125 Hertz to 250. Band 05, insert keyframe, channel, sound to samples. This is going to be 250 to 500. Band 06, insert keyframe. Channel sound to samples 500 to 1000. Band 07, insert keyframe. Channel sound to samples 1000 to 2000. Band 08, insert keyframe. Channel sound to samples 2 kilohertz to 4 kilohertz. Band 09, insert keyframe. Channel sound to samples 4000 to 8000. Band 10, insert keyframe. Channel sound to samples 8000 to 16,000. Okay, then before we test this out, let's add a workspace for video editing. Okay. And let's add the audio so that we can listen as we test this out. And I will press play. And we can see that it's working just the way we expect it to. And that's all that we have for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.